Hey everybody, Tekking101 here, and in this video we will be discussing the almighty, the all-powerful, the all-knowing God. No, not that God. Common misconception, sorry, I should have clarified. We're talking about this God. Yeah, I know, kind of ironic considering that this God created this God, but I digress. Alright, so Eneru. Or Enel. I guess I should probably, nip this in the bud while we have it. It was Enel in the Japanese dub. It was Eneru in the English dub. It can be romanticized that way, so I'm going to probably use Eneru because that's the way I've heard it the most. I watch the Funimation dub more than the Japanese. What do you want from me? That's what you're getting. Okay. So, Eneru is very interesting when you compare him to all the other big bads in the One Piece universe. All the main villains of their respective arcs that received a Gamu Gamu no curb stomping from Luffy at the end of it. He's unique because, for one thing, he didn't really get defeated. I mean, he did, but he didn't. Now, let me clarify. Luffy has never straight up just killed the main villain of an arc, okay? That's not Luffy's style. Oda explains that in this era of dreamers that the One Piece universe takes place in, killing someone is the same as their dreams ending. So leaving them alive is sort of like Luffy's way of giving them a second chance to pick themselves back up and try to, continue on their path, So that's why, that's the reason Oda gives why Luffy doesn't just straight up kill people. But most time Luffy defeats somebody, there's always, like, some ramifications for that, where that main enemy, that main villain is taken out of the arc or taken out of commission in some way. With Crocodile and with Arlong and with Doflamingo, they were immediately arrested and taken away. Rob Lucci, after he defeated Rob Lucci was wrecked. He was, there's no way he could stand back up after that. CP9 was devastated. Didn't really defeat Magellan, but it was sort of like a moral victory over him. Hody Jones turned old due to his, doping up on the steroids, so he couldn't fight anymore. That kind of shit. Eneru is so weird because, you have that big climactic battle with him, where he's on top of Maxim and he's going into his fucking Raigo or whatever the hell it was, giant electrical mode and shit, and Luffy has the golden bell attached to his arm and he just, bam, golden rifle, slams the shit out of him, and you have this moment where he's falling down through the white sea, into the White Sea, the arc falls with him, but then he just kind of, regains consciousness, gets on board the thing, and just all right, let's go to the moon. So it's one of those things where it's like, if he really wanted to, he could probably go back and fight Luffy. He could probably wreck their shit. It's just that what was right in front of him was that's all, Sky Island, that's all behind me now. I'm heading to fucking Fairy Verth, bitch. I don't even have time to do that. But just remember, he was defeated by Luffy. He did knock him unconscious. He freed Skypiea from his rule. But the only reason it stayed that way was because Eneru had different views on where he wanted to go in his life. It wasn't like, I gotta get back up and take back my throne. He discarded it. He didn't care about it anymore. So that's the reason that, they're safe now, why Skypiea is probably not gonna be fucked with him for at least a while. So, what happened to him after that? Well, there was a cover story, Eneru's Great Space Operation, that explains this, and I'll cover this very quickly so we can get to some theories here. I'm going to be covering two main things. I'm going to be covering the theory involving, what's going to happen with him later on in the story, in the future, and a little bit about his past that I've been looking up and trying to piece together here. So, during Eneru's Great Space Operation, he takes the arc Maxim to the moon. Now, the moon in One Piece is not the same as the moon in our universe. It has its own breathable atmosphere, it's very close to the Earth, so he could just reach that place using his arc that, he had his followers built, and using his Goro Goro no Mi powers, made it to the moon. On the moon, he encounters these robotic life forms called automata. Now, there were some automata that were created on, Earth that managed to get to the moon, and then there were other automata that were already in existence on the moon. Now, he also runs into space pirates. That's a thing that exists. Fucking space pirates. That deserves its own separate video on its own. But yeah, he runs into some space pirates. They piss him off. He wipes the floor with them. Eventually, Eneru discovers this underground city called Bilka, which is named after the same area in Skypiea where he came from. Or maybe it's like Bricka or something like that. And that's the pronunciation I'm not even going to fuck with. But yeah, so he finds this city in there. And the city has all these rows of automata, these robotic little kind of servants that exist in this city, and he sees these hieroglyphics. And then on the wall of the glyphs, we see depictions of the 3 types of humans that were living in Skypiea. We saw the Skypians, which, like Conus and Pagia were part of. They have the wings on their back, and they have, like, the antennae, which might be their hair. They might be actual antennae. I don't know. Then we have the Shandians, who are the ancestors of the Shandorians. This would be, like, Wiper and Loki and, Kalgara's ancestors, the Shandians. And then finally we see the Bilkians, who are the the ancestors of the land that Eneru came from. Eneru was from this land called Bilka, which was, a pretty powerful place in Skypiea. It was like this really strong, like a lot of warriors came from this place. And then after Eneru obtained his Goro Goro no Mi, he just wiped the place out. Got some theories about that in a second, but it's interesting to note, okay, so at one point in the past, a long time ago, all 3 of these races existed on the moon as sort of like a moon race. And at some point they ran out of resources on the moon, so they had to descend to the planet Earth. And you have the Skypians and the Bilkians that settled in the White Sea. And then you had the Shandians who made it all the way to the Blue Sea world, and they settled on Jaya. And then eventually Jaya was shot into the sky by the knock-up stream, creating Upper Yard, leading into, their descendants, which are like Wiper and Loki and all those, the gorillas, as they're referred to. Now, I admit, this was a little bit confusing for me, because I remember reading the Skypiea story arc, and I was under the impression that, like, the Shandorians were originally just like a tribe of people living on Jaya. Like, they were normal humans 400 years ago that got blasted into the sky, and just because of hundreds of years of living in the sky, they developed wings, and then that's why they're there. But they originally came from the planet Earth. So you can understand my confusion here whenever we get that flashback. Near the end of the Skypiea arc, we get a flashback with Noland and Kalgara, and how they were friends. And Kalgara is, just living on Jaya with everybody else. This was before the place got, shot into the sky. And Kalgara still has wings on his back. So I'm thinking, like, wait a second, though. If this whole tribe of people was existing on Jaya, this is before they got involved. So, yeah, that's not what happened at all. Yeah, all 3 of the races came from the moon and then settled on the Earth. And it was just happen chance that the whole knock-up stream, split Jaya in half, and they got knocked back up into the sky. So, that was a very interesting thing there that we found out, that we connects these three species together. And they were also working together at some point. So they were part of this species on the moon. What were they attempting to do there? Where did they come from? How did they get there? Whatever. But there was a race of people that lived on the moon that had to leave because of lack of resources. So they had this automated city that ran on electricity. Well, Eneru's right there, so he just powers up the city with his powers. He has an entire army of automata with him that can, be his servants and fight for him or whatever. And he has he's rebuilt his kingdom in a sense on his fairy Verth. So that's the last time we saw Eneru, on the moon. But I feel like there's 2 ways you could look at it. You could look at it like, all right, he's perfectly happy just living on the moon. That's where he wanted to go to begin with. He has a legion of followers, so he's cool. Or he's going to get really fucking bored with the fact that there's really nothing on the moon all that much, really for him to do. He's like the only life form there aside from the space pirates, which I still don't know what's up with that. But and he's going to return to the Earth at some point. He's going to return to the planet to do some shit. And we've seen that Oda brings back a lot of the characters from former story arcs. We've seen this. Rob Lucci and Spondum are now back now. They're members of CP0. Buggy's reappeared in the story a bunch of times. Crocodile's going to reappear probably again at some point. After he was, after he got brought back and Impel Down, he's in the New World probably. He's going to show up at some point as well. So I think that's what part of Oda's storytelling style is, not just was okay, here was the main villain of an arc, got taken out, we're never going to hear from him again, his story's over and it's concluded. I think Oda likes to see things through, story arcs through, okay, they were defeated, but what's up with them now? What's going on with them? And I don't think he would just disregard Eneru. I just think that his part in the story is probably not going to be until much later down the line when we start piecing all these mysteries of the world together. Also, here's an idea. If you're under the impression that Eneru is perfectly happy living on the moon right now, if you think that he's not going to try to return to Earth, he's not going to try to reclaim Skypiea or go to the Blue Sea, he has his empire, he has his city, he has his legion of followers, he's happy on the moon, that's his kingdom now, his fairy birth, he's not leaving. If you think that's the case, then what about the possibility of the Straw Hats getting to the moon somehow? Now, I know you might think that might be a little bit difficult, but once again, getting to the moon in One Piece is not hard. It isn't. You want to know how easy it is to get to the moon in the One Piece universe? Okay. Remember those automata I was talking about earlier? So there was the two types. There was the automata that already were on the moon that the ancient moon people created. But then you had 4 automata that were created by this guy on the future land of Baltimore, the same place that Vegapunk, grew up and where Frankie, had his 2 years of training during the time skip. There was a scientist on that island that created the automata, right? And it was this funny scene where he was an old dude, and he was living with his 4 automata, and then he was looking up at the moon one day, and while eating rice crackers, and there was this big explosion on the moon, and he choked on a rice cracker because of the explosion. It scared him. He choked. And his 4 automata, they loved him like a father, so they're like, we're going to figure out what happened up there. So they take balloons, ordinary fucking balloons that you could just go buy at a freaking party like a Dollar Tree, and just wrapped it around their wrists, and they floated up to the fucking thing. That's how they got up there. And okay, that might be ridiculous, but the way that Eneru got up there wasn't really that difficult. He had a basic flying machine that ran on his powers. I mean, it was it was an arc because he's godly and it's so cool. So it was a really elaborate thing, but it was basically just a normal, like spinning blades, propulsion, helicopter. I don't know. I'm not into aviation, but it seemed like a pretty simple thing in all respects. There was no like pressurized anything on there. It was very clear. It's made very clear in the One Piece universe. If you just float up high enough, you will eventually get to the moon. So yeah, given that's the kind of logic that Oda's throwing out at us here, I don't think it's too unlikely to say they get to an island at some point, maybe there's some mystery involving the poneglyphs or some history or something like that, and they have to go to the moon. It takes a relatively short amount of time to get there. It's relatively easy. The Thousand Sunny's already capable of flight. It's flown many of times before. When they invaded Gyorankande Plaza back in the Fishman Island arc, they basically converted the Thousand Sunny into like a Zeppelin with the bubbles and shit. So, you could probably figure out, Frankie could probably figure out some way to just get it to be floating and then just have it keep floating up. Like in the movie Up. Just tie a bunch of balloons to the fucking thing. You'll be fine. And they get to the moon and they see, oh shit, Eneru's there. And I think that would make more sense than Eneru coming back down to the Blue Sea and just happening upon Luffy and the Straw Hats again and like having a battle with them. I think that would be rather, that's more difficult to believe. Like, okay, Eneru's going to come down from the moon with his army of little robot toy soldiers, and he just happens to see Luffy and it just happens to encounter them again. I think it would make more sense for the Straw Hats, or maybe not even the Straw Hats, but just somebody that, goes to the moon that's part of, like, that we know of in the cast, and then finds out this history, and then returns, and maybe when the Straw Hats find them, then they tell them, they relay the information or some way. But I would like to see the Straw Hats interact with Eneru again, and if they went to the moon, they would, and I think that's perfectly logical, considering how easy it is to get to the damn thing. Okay, and now for the end of this video, we are going to be entering a place that I like to call the land of high speculation. Even I don't believe 100% in all the things I'm going to say. I hesitate to even present this as like, this is my theory on what it is, because there are holes in pretty much everything I'm going to present to you, but I'm noticing just a few things that are weird here with Eneru, involving his past, involving his status as a god, and I just wanted to bring these to your attention. There's some things I noticed while researching him for this video. The general idea I'm looking at here is it maybe possible that Eneru was not born in the sky? He's not a native of a sky island, of Blicka, that he states he didn't state he was from there. That's one thing. I believe it was one of the White Berets, Captain McKinley, was the one that talked about Eneru's past from Blicka. Is it possible that he was born in the Blue Sea world? you know, like where the Straw Hats and everybody else is from, and he managed to get to the sky somehow. The reason I say this, there's a few. The first is pretty obvious. He doesn't have any wings. Now, most of the people that we've encountered, in fact, the vast majority of characters that are introduced during Skypiea have wings. The Blickens have wings that point downwards, the Shandorians and the Skypieans have wings that place upwards, but they always have wings. I believe the one exception to this is Gonfall, but I don't know for a fact that Gonfall doesn't have wings, because usually we see Gonfall wearing his, you know, he has armor on, or he has that big, huge, bulky cloak he has on. We've never really seen him shirtless. Maybe we have, I can't quite remember, but okay, so he's, even if he is the lone exception, that's still the vast majority of people we've seen on Sky Island that have wings, and Eneru does not. Now, he has that ring thing on his back that has the heavenly Tomoe. Now, I could say that, you know, when I first saw that, you know, I think that's a lot of people pointed that out when he was first introduced, like, oh, he's from the sky, but he doesn't have wings. I think most people just assumed he ripped out his own wings, or he amputated his wings for some reason and replaced them with that arc thing on his back. That's one way of looking at it. Another way is he never had wings to begin with. He was born in the normal blue sea, like all the other, you know, like the Straw Hats and all the members of the main cast of the series. You know, that's where they're from. Okay, and then at some point he managed to get into the sky, managed to get into sky to Blicka. Maybe that's a place, like all of his followers are from Blicka. All the priests are from there, and his divine squad, they're all from that place. And so, you know, that's the place that he first arrived, or he got there when he got to the White Sea, and eventually, after amassing his power and whatever, he just nuked the fucking island and then, you know, went to go claim his throne as god. A few other things that raise red flags to me is that devil fruits are very rare in the White Sea, or in the sky in general. You don't see any. The only other devil fruit user that was introduced was Pierre, Gonfall's little hummingbird / horse / steed. You know, that's the only other character that was introduced that has a devil fruit during Skypiea. None of the regular Skypieans have that. None of the Shandorians have that. Not even any of Eneru's priests have devil fruit abilities. It's just Eneru and Pierre. This is what I mean by there being holes in these theories. If it was just Eneru, that might have something to go off of, but here it's Eneru and one other character, so that's why I'm saying there's holes in them. So, you know, it's a possibility, because devil fruits, obviously, they're fruits, and after one devil fruit, you know, after that user dies, it migrates to another fruit. You know, and while you can support plant life while in the sky, plant life cannot actually grow there, so it would be fairly difficult to get a devil fruit into the sky. Finally, there's this is something that might be viewed as more symbolic, but you have Luffy defeating Eneru. And the way that this is relevant is because that Eneru is, what's he refer to himself as? He refers to him as a god. And Luffy, you know, he is Monkey D. Luffy. He has the D initial. And later on in the story, what is it referred to as when Corazon's talking with Law about the will of D and everything? He's saying the people that bear the D initial are God's natural enemy. So you find it rather poetic that Luffy is the one to fucking golden rifle the fuck out of Eneru, dethrone him from his godly position, and he's the D, you know, so it's like, oh, in this case, it is literally interpreted as it's God's natural enemy. And this brings me to the final page of this theory thing I have going on here. What if Eneru, while in the Blue Sea, was a world noble? I mean, his personality fits perfectly. I mean, that personality that he has, you know, that arrogance about him, that view that he is actually onto a god, I don't feel like he developed that overnight later in his life. I feel like that's something he had with him for a long time. And what other characters in this series all have that same exact fucking attitude? Doflamingo kind of had it even a little bit too. That attitude that we're just naturally better than everyone else. We are unto gods on this earth. It's the world nobles. There's also a thing that Eneru did not know about rubber. You know, when Luffy was explaining, you know, I'm a rubber man, that's why electricity doesn't work on him. Which, by the way, I think I need to mention that pretty quickly. The whole idea with Luffy defeating Eneru, that was just fucking luck that he had the rubber fruit, okay? Because, like, Eneru is fucking powerful. Even Oda came out and said, like, Luffy got lucky. Because somebody talked about, like, what would Eneru's bounty be? Would he rule the Blue Sea if he was there? And Oda said that, no, he wouldn't rule the Blue Sea. There's a lot of people that are stronger than Eneru. He would not rule it. But he would have a bounty of around 500 million berries. And he also mentions, yeah, Luffy was extremely lucky that his Devil Fruit was the exact opposite of Eneru's, that it managed to negate all of Eneru's electrical abilities. He was extremely lucky there. So yeah, just need to point that out, you know. But yeah, so if he was a world noble, you know, maybe he never experienced, because, you know, world nobles are holed up in their freaking ivory towers and their golden palatial estates in Marijois. You know, so the idea that a world noble would never have heard about rubber before, that's not too far from imagination. You see what lengths the world nobles go to in the world. You know, they literally walk around with domes on their heads to make sure that they don't have to breathe the same air as commoners. So the fact that they would be ignorant of something like rubber, you know, probably not something that if they don't have to deal with it in their everyday lives, they might not necessarily have to in the way of lives that the world nobles have. You know, I'm just saying it fits his personality perfectly. Absolutely, that if he was raised in that environment, had that personality, and took it to a new level, where he wanted to be like, no, I don't want to. If you know, he was taught and raised, if you're a world noble, you're basically better than everyone else. We are basically the gods of the world. Eneru thought, hey, I'm gonna be a real god. I'm gonna travel to the sky, and I'm gonna be the god of the world. So he travels up to the Sky Islands, and then he found out the Sky Islands were there. You know, had the Gora Gora know me, knew about hockey, began to take over there, and he's like, no, I'm gonna go one step up. He has a god complex. He has a god fetish. He's just like, I want to be higher, and I want to be better, you know, and I want to be, you know, lord over everybody, you know. I think that would fit him perfectly. Like I said, there's a lot of holes in that theory. I just wanted to bring it to your attention, what you think about it. You know, maybe you can put these pieces together in some way. I might be stretching it a little bit. Probably the biggest ones I'm stretching here are the fact that he didn't know what rubber was. Because I'm thinking, like, all right, it's possible maybe as a world noble he never knew what rubber was. Maybe just he never encountered it in his normal life. No one ever told him. But I find that kind of a stretch, no pun intended, but kind of a stretch that there's this thing called rubber and he just never heard about it. So, yeah, that's a few faults I have with that theory. But I just wanted to think, I mean, I read about this on a forum, and the forum took it a different way. They were trying to relate, I think they were relating to Eneru to like CP9 at some point, and I, you know, fell off the track a few points there. But I did find that the fact that he might have not have been born in Skypiea, he might have been born in the Blue Sea and might have been a world noble, I found that maybe at least graspable a little bit. I'll put the link to that forum below. But yeah, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about Eneru possibly returning, or about the characters encountering him again on the moon, or about Eneru's past. I do not think Oda is done with this character yet. I still think there's a lot more stuff that he's going to be relevant in the story later down the line, most definitely. So thank you guys for watching. This will be Tekking101 signing out.